there in the middle of the country. And joining me now is Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham, good morning.
Good morning.
The Dow fell almost 575 points Friday over concerns about the president's tariff proposal. Those farm families I talked to, like the Fishers in Iowa, who you just saw, are concerned. What would you say to them?
Well, that we're trying to get China to act better, and if you get into a contest with China, you're going to have to see this thing through. The Chinese buy a lot of American soybeans and pork. They got 1.2 billion people to feed. I tell these people to go to the Rust Belt and see what's happened in that part of America due to Chinese unfair trade practices. I support President Trump pushing back against commodity dumping, intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and we got to see this thing through. The Chinese need us more than we need them economically, and the only way you'll get China to change is make them pay a price, and our farming communities on the front lines, but we got to stick with it.
Your Republican colleague, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, slammed the president's strategy, saying China is guilty of many things, but the president has no actual plan to win right now. He's threatening to light American agriculture on fire. Let's absolutely take on Chinese bad behavior, but with a plan that punishes them instead of us. This is the dumbest possible way to do this. Does the president have a plan?
Well, I would say to Ben, there's no way to put tariffs on the products that benefit from Chinese currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, and commodity dumping without the potential of China firing back. We're trying to protect the American steel industry from Chinese dumping. We're trying to protect the American high-tech community from Chinese intellectual property theft. And one of the ways they can fight back is to hit us in the agricultural sector. So there is no way for us to address China without absorbing some pain here. So to those who believe that China is cheating, what idea do you have better than Trump? He's the first guy to actually take them on. They have a weak economy compared to ours, the Chinese. They don't have Social Security. They don't have unemployment benefits. They don't have Medicare or Medicaid. So let's play this out. They need us more than we need them. And all I'm asking them to do, Martha, is to quit cheating us out of market share. I want a good relationship with China, but you can't have one when they cheat you out of market share.
Well, Senator Graham, China seems to know exactly where to target this, maximizing pressure in states like your own with BMW and Volvo, who've warned about the impact of trade conflict. The Chinese are playing this in a very sophisticated way, and it's an authoritarian state. You really think President Xi is going to back down?
I think their economy is set up so they got to feed 1.2 billion people a day. So if you put tariffs on pork products coming from the United States, the pork prices go up in China, or you turn to some other country to get your pork. There's eventually going to be a problem in China when you increase tariffs on soybeans. Commodity prices go up in China. The Chinese people don't get to vote, but they do get to grumble. So my state makes BMWs. It will hurt BMW in the short term to deal with the Chinese steel dumping. I understand that. But at the end of the day, the president promised if he got to be president, he would push back against China. That's exactly what he's doing. They're pushing back against us. I like our chances of prevailing if we stick with it.
Okay, the president is tweeting this morning, however. President Xi and I will always be friends. China will take down its trade barriers because it is the right thing to do. Taxes will become reciprocal, and a deal will be made on intellectual property. Great future for both countries. What's going on with that?
Well, number one, I hope that proves to be true, but the Chinese president will not give in because it's the right thing to do. He'll give in because it hurts his economy to the point that he has to change his behavior. Every European nation will agree that China engages in unfair trade practices. The world should unite around President Trump, bring this to a closure, and all we're asking China to do is play by the rules. You can't get into Chinese markets.
But are there negotiations going on right now?
Yes.
Is there really a plan here?
Yeah, you know, if you want to open up business in China, you have to have a minority stake in the business. They steal your intellectual property and open up a competitor right across the street. You can't get into the financial services market in China because the government closes it out. What we want is reciprocal fair trade. Yes, they're talking, but don't underestimate the problems that China will have over a prolonged engagement with the United States.
Let's move to the border. I want to know whether you agree I think we've exhausted China there. I want to know if you agree with the president sending National Guard troops to the border and doing it so suddenly.
Well, he'll be the third president to do so, and here's what I would tell him. There makes some sense to send soldiers to the border, but you're not going to secure a border just by adding National Guard troops. You got to go to the root cause of this. The caravans come from the Triangle countries, Honduras and Guatemala in particular, because the conditions are so bad. If you don't have comprehensive immigration reform, so it's easier for American companies to hire, you have more labor available to American companies, you'll never fix this problem. And here's what I would tell the American people. We have two borders, one with Canada, one with Mexico. I've never met an illegal Canadian. I went to New Hampshire to look for them and couldn't find one when I was running for president. The point is that Canada has a sound economy. People from the south of us do not have sound economies, and if you don't fix the economic magnet, you'll never solve the immigration problem. So building a wall alone won't do anything.
Well, let's talk about the immigration problem. Earlier this week, the president tweeted there would be no more DACA deal. You've been part of the DACA negotiations in Congress. Yeah. Is a DACA deal really off the table? And if so, what happens to those children?
Well, there's a pony in there somewhere, Martha, and I'm looking for that pony. Number one, the court's probably going to rule for the president down the road that he can terminate DACA. That creates some chaos for the DACA recipients who came here on the average age of 6 with nowhere else to go. This is their country. There's a deal to take care of them and get the border wall we desperately need, plus interior enforcement to make us safer. That deal can be done, and I'll make a prediction on this show that there'll be another effort to marry up border security and DACA by the spring, early summer.
And you feel confident that'll go through?
I'm hopeful it will, because if we fail, it's just a disaster for the DACA recipients and for our national security, and 70% of the American people want us to do both. It may fail, but I believe we owe it to the American people to try again, and I'm going to try again, and I think the president is open-minded to trying again.
And Senator Graham, I want to move on to Syria. We've all seen those horrific images this morning. The president just tweeting many dead, including women and children, in mindless chemical attack in Syria. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing animal Assad. Big price to pay. What do you think he means by that? Tom Bossert told me nothing's off the table.
Well, it's a defining moment in his presidency, because he has challenged Assad in the past not to use chemical weapons. We had a one-and-done a missile attack, so Assad's at it again. They see us, our resolve breaking. They see our determination to stay in Syria waning, and this no accident they use chemical weapons. But President Trump can reset the table here. To me, I would destroy Assad's air force. I would create safe zones in Syria where people can come back to their country from the surrounding area. And live a better life, train up Syrians to take on Assad so we can negotiate in Geneva from a position of strength. If it becomes a tweet without meaning, then he's hurt himself with North Korea. If he doesn't follow through and live up to that tweet, he's going to look weak in the eyes of Russia and Iran. So this is a defining moment, Mr. President. You need to follow through with that tweet, show a resolve that Obama never did to get this right.
And Senator Graham, this week also, you heard President Trump saying he wanted to pull our troops out of Syria. They clarified that somewhat. What do you think about doing that? I know it's a different fight. It's against ISIS.
The complete, utter disaster to leave before the fight's done. Have we learned nothing what happens when you leave too soon? We pulled our troops out of Iraq. ISIS came back. But President Trump made a speech in Riyadh, Martha, that was very important. He went to the Arab world and said two things. I stand with you against Iran, and I stand with you to defeat radical Islam. If we leave Syria by the mere passage of time, we undercut that policy. ISIS will come back. You'll be giving Damascus to the Iranians. They'll have a land bridge from Tehran to Beirut. Syria will be occupied by Hezbollah, Russia, Iran, a nightmare for our friends in Israel. You've got to stick with it. You need a holding force as part of a regional force. If Americans are not part of a holding force, ISIS will come back. And there is no strategy by the Trump administration to counter Iranian expansion. And you need a strategy to deal with Iran just as much as ISIS. And the test of that strategy is in Syria.
We saw H.R. McMaster, the president's national security advisor, leave this week. He got a very warm send-off from staff.
Yeah.
But you have
Great man.
John Bolton coming in. There's H.R. McMaster, truly, clearly loved by some of the staff there. But you have John Bolton coming in. What will change, and what do you think will change with Syria, if anything?
Well, I had dinner with Bolton last week, and he asked me what's going to be my biggest challenge. I said it would be Syria. President Trump's taken the gloves off when it comes to fighting ISIS inside of Iraq. He's done the same in Syria, but he wants to somehow leave. All I can tell President Trump, you building a wall to protect us from threats from the southern border, there is no wall you can build in the Mideast. The only way we can protect America from Mideast threats is to have our troops working with regional partners to have a virtual wall over there. If you take these troops out of Syria, ISIS comes back, Iran begins to dominate Syria, and that's the end of us being a reliable ally. The Kurds that fought with us are going to get slaughtered by Turkey. The entire region's going to melt down into the Sunni-Shia conflict. So Pompeo and Bolton need to explain to the President of the United States that what happens in Syria matters to America. There is no foreign government or force to outsource our national security. Keep these troops in Syria. If you pull them out too soon, you'll have Iraq all over again with worse consequences.
And Senator Graham, just finally back to domestic politics. EPA Chief Scott Pruitt has been under fire this week after numerous reports questioning his spending habits. Do you think he should go?
I think he's done a good job, but I'm looking to see what the Oversight Committee is going to say. The one thing I can say, if you're the EPA administrator and two lobbyists change the locks, you've got a problem. The bottom line is, doesn't look good. I like Scott. He's done a good job from my point of view as being EPA administrator, but the Congress has an oversight role here, and we'll see where this goes.
Does it look like he's engaged in questionable behavior to you?
I don't think you could get a room for $50 a night.
It'd be tough to do in Washington, that's for sure. Thanks very much, Senator Graham.
Thank you.
Coming up, the round